right lane as always with the homie Webs, and here's the Legion of Pedagogical Supervillains. We're going to be talking a little bit about Canvas and how Canvas could be the PLC hub, the social hub, the collaboration center of your school, and it doesn't have to be that hard. And as always, again, we're kicking it with the homie Webs, and Webs has her own insights into just the real world applications of what we're talking about here. As always, it's Monday Eve, which is a good thing. It's good to be alive and whatnot, so it's a good thing. Hopefully, excuse me, something that we talk about this evening will be a ideal concept that you're able to utilize in your classroom. Webs was really good, man.
You know, hanging in.
I mean, it is what it is. Hanging, I mean,
It's
hanging
getting
in is.
warmer. Did you see we tipped into the 90s?
I wear sweatshirts all year round, so my wardrobe is not going to change. I think we have a in Vegas, even though it's 90 outside, people will keep it 65 inside with the air conditioning stuff. So I'm good either way. Um, I don't know. It is going to be cool to be able to potentially go outside and not have to worry about it being super windy and super cold again.
Yeah, windy and cold. Still windy, but it's a hot wind.
Yeah, which is fine. The cold wind is what I don't like. So the hot wind is, I guess, it is what it is. But one of the things, and that we're going to start to show off as always with kind of this Ask the Editor, Webb's kind of putting her real job perspective on stuff that works in classrooms. But like in terms of like where we're going to go today, the question I have for you is this thing called GitHub that is like, if you're paying attention, is ubiquitous on the Twitters. People are sending links to their GitHub, etc. What is the GitHub? What does this mean? And also, in terms of applications and the reasons why GitHub exists, can you explain those things?
Oh boy. I hope there are no developers listening to this. This feels like it feels like a trap. What is GitHub? Okay, so when developers are working on code together, we even if we're co-located, even if we are in the same place, our code still has to have a home and it has to be accessible for everyone working on the team to be able to work on it because we're often working on different pieces of the code at the same time. So if you think about it like building a car, maybe I'm working on putting together the tires, and somebody else is working on putting together the trunk or something, the interior, I don't know, whatever. So one of the ways that we make sure that, and sometimes we're working closely in the same space, so we want to make sure we don't have collisions in code. Like I write something and you write something, and then it clashes, and part of your stuff gets overwritten and part of my stuff gets overwritten, and nothing works. So the way that we go about managing that problem is using something called version control. So one of the tools for doing version control is called Git. Git is different from GitHub. So Git is an actual command line tool that people use. And basically what it does is it'll keep track, like in a timeline, of how the code is edited. And it'll tell you do what's called committing. So let's say I'm working on something, I add some new code, and I want to officially like put it on the timeline. I do what's called a commit. So, and then I can push that commit to my repository so that everybody else can then pull down that commit and have a copy of it. And GitHub is a service that is like cloud-based, like so many things, where you can save your code remotely so that it's accessible to anyone you want it to be accessible to. One of the major ways that services like GitHub, because there are several, there's like Bitbucket is another one. There's also different version control tools like SVN, but Git is probably the most popular. So you have the ability to make your code open to anyone. So they have what are called open source projects, and those are just a random collection of people who come together and work on building a thing. I'm trying to think of a good example of an open source project, and I'm totally drawing a blank right now. Um, I want to say Kubernetes moved to open source, but like there are like core structures that the internet is built on that are open source. And I'm sure somebody, if there are any developers watching, and they can throw it in the comments, but um there these open source projects bring together total strangers from all over to build a thing together. And to manage that, there are tools like you have a place where you can say, hey, these are all the things that need to be worked on, these are all the tasks that need to be done, and some random person can pick up that task and do that work, submit that code. It goes through a pull request review, so like a code review where people look at the code and they say, yep, that looks like it's going to work okay, we really like the way that it's designed. Or you give feedback and you say, oh, could you change this, could you update this? They make the changes. Eventually that code gets merged and the project moves forward. So that is the TLDR on what Git and GitHub is and how developers use it.
Very dope. Now you
It
can.
is super cool. Like I've thought about how it would be cool to have something like GitHub, or for teachers to learn how to use GitHub for like lesson planning, because it tracks that like history of what you've done before, which I think is really cool.
So you can limit access to your code as well, correct?
Yes, that is correct. You can make a repository private and you can add contributors to it. So you can say like, hey, this is a private project, but I want Mike to help me on it. So I'm going to add him as a contributor so that he has access to this particular project.
Super dope. And
They also have, you can do like GitHub pages where you can add additional contextual information, or you can do like support documents. So there's a lot more than just you write code. Although a lot of code bases have like readmes built in, where it tells you all about the code and how to run it, and maybe links to other places where you can get other information. But yeah, there's a lot of resources on GitHub that make it so that you can work with people remotely.
super dope. Now, with that being the case, how tell me about the efficiency in GitHub. Like how
Efficiency.
efficient is having the world be able to work on something rather than the only people that can work on something is people that are in IRL.
Gotcha. Okay. I was wondering where this is going because I was like, what could GitHub possibly have to do with anything we talk about on the show? Um, it all move. It's like ants. So it's like ants building an ant hill. You have all these different people, and you're talking about people in different time zones and different areas. It also allows for different perspectives. So if you have people that are brand new to writing code, if you have people that have been around for a while and are well seasoned, and or maybe of people who are new to a specific language, or maybe you have a big project that has both a front end and a back end, so you need both types of developers, or like things get done so much more quickly. And with, actually, I think there's research that shows open source code is not only accomplished more quickly, but also more it's more resilient because it's open to anybody, so anyone can look at it and say, oh hey, here's a bug, here's a bug, here's a problem, and then they also have the power to go in and fix it if they know how to.
Exactamundo. So that being the case, we always would you agree that more voices in a room being able to contribute at the speed of thought is probably better than less voices in a room attempting to negotiate things.
I think it's a normal curve because I think that on the end where you don't have enough voices, things don't move forward. It becomes difficult to make decisions. You have a very limited perspective that are contributing to the solutions. On the opposite end of the spectrum, when you have an excessive number of people, it's difficult to make decisions because you have so many voices. It's difficult to move forward because you're trying to get consensus. So I think there is a Goldilocks zone, but I think it's a pretty broad Goldilocks zone. Like Amazon talks about pizza size teams and how you want to have as many people on a team as can split like two large pizzas or something to that effect. I don't remember exactly what it is, but yeah, so I think there's a Goldilocks zone for it, but I think working in isolation is definitely not the business.
Well, I guess I misspoke what I'm thinking. So having the open source concept means that any passerby could look at something and say, I have a solution for that. Here's my solution, right?
That is correct.
So
Yeah.
it gives the opportunity for anyone with a level of expertise to weigh in on that problem and say, hey, this is a solution I think might work. And that solution may work, it may not work, but I have the opportunity to have my voice be heard in that scenario because it is public and because I have access to whatever, machinery will get me on the internet. I can go and do what is necessary. With that kind of as the kernel, right? This opportunity to act rather than invitation to act, right? So there's
Hmm.
a place for me to be able to, I could go and search GitHub every day and find problems that perhaps my skill set would allow me to solve. Or is there the other thing that intrigues me about GitHub, and again, as a non-developer, just reading people's what they found on GitHub, where they place things on GitHub, or whatever. It's also a place to learn, right? Even if I don't know what the devil you're talking about, I can go and see this. There's patterns in what this person did that are match the patterns over here, or this is missing over here that's not over here, and I may not know why that's the case, but I can observe it, right? So there's also this the transparency of being able to just observe this phenomenon happening benefits even people who don't have the particular set of expertise, right?
Hmm.
So there's a benefit to having glass houses in that sense, right? So I can see what's going on, and even if I can't, if it's not something that, again, I have that expertise with, at least I can observe and say, this seems to be the pattern of how these things work. I wonder if this is true, and can I duplicate that pattern for other systems? Which
Yep, that's
brings us
absolutely true.
to the hustle for the night, right? Now, again, you're the developer.
That's what
One of the
people tell
things
me.
that's mad interesting to me is, and maddening to be honest, is again this commitment to isolationism and individual planning in school settings, right? Which doesn't seem to be there is a spirit of machismo and this rugged individualism in developing. You've sent multiple tweets and we've read articles which if you can't do it by yourself then you whatever. But collectively, it seems as though with places like GitHub and these Bitbucket and stuff, it seems that a lot of people have realized that we can move faster and more efficient if we work together. That does not
I would say
seem good.
even the idea of like the like cowboy coder, I'm gonna sit in my basement and work by myself kind of person. I mean, in a way, you're still doing asynchronous collaboration, or you're doing asynchronous, maybe not collaboration, but like you are working together with other people just by the nature of the fact that you're contributing to a larger project, even if you're working by yourself at the time. So I think there are kind of layers of collaboration. The best and, in my opinion, healthiest teams I've worked on and are not only collaborative in the sense of like we're all contributing to the same code base, but also we work together to solve the problems within that code base. So ideally, like that would be my preferred situation. I mean, I don't want to work together like pairing 8 hours a day, but the ability to sit together on a call and go through code and talk through solutions gets you to a solution a lot more quickly than if you're just trying to struggle and go at it by yourself.
Big facts. But there aren't systems like that that are built for educators, right? I mean, people use Twitter kind of as this thing, but Twitter is messy and it's not really in terms of having a base of here are things that you can utilize and spin up very, very quickly. That's not really what Twitter does, right? One could.
Yeah, and even Google Drive is more like a repository of random information versus one of the things about GitHub too, I suppose, is that you collect things in code bases, right? Like you can definitely have a repository that's just random nonsense. Like some people use GitHub as repositories for like link libraries, almost like what was that tool back in the day that had like the little squares where you could do like bookmarks?
Uh,
I
Symbaloo,
forget what it was called.
Symbaloo.
Symbaloo, yeah. So some people use GitHub like a Symbaloo, but not quite as visual. And so, like, one of the things about GitHub though is that most places, most repositories are like a collection of code that works together for building a thing. Where I feel like putting things in and it tells you how it work, how those pieces work together. Where I feel like dumping things into say like a Google Drive folder or even a shared drive, it doesn't tell you how those pieces work together. It doesn't give you the framework for how to put those resources into a given lesson or unit or whatever. And that's definitely something that's missing.
Absolutely, absolutely. But also the being able to work with people outside of your building, right? So like that's one of the things that I always thought was very limiting by PLNs and stuff, right? This is our prep and we get to meet with our grade level. All right. So I am now perhaps there's perhaps 4 out of the 5 people in my grade level are first year teachers, right? Some people don't have the experience necessary to even design what we're talking about. Now I am hamstrung, or we are hamstrung collectively in terms of the only sources of information we have are people who've never done the job before. How do we interject um, the experiences of more seasoned professionals into this conversation without having to change the time because we don't have control over the time of our PLN, inconvenience ourselves by having to figure out like after school childcare and whatever else is popping off, right? How do we do this asynchronously so that I can go and acquire this information whenever it is necessary, but also have contributions from anybody, any grade level, people outside of our building, uh, experts that might not even be in our district. Like, how do we go and have those situations? How do we GitHub that situation in terms of um, here is project, here's idea, very focused and efficiently. We're going to go and figure out how to do this process and idea rather than how do you teach first grade in this kind of like amorphous, large sense, right? Which is one of the frustrations I'm having. I'm currently taking a course that is I'm beginning to hate the term educational technology because I don't think that's a thing. And for people to be wedded to that conversation, that vocabulary, that the verbiage, I think is kind of damning, right? Because if you're saying educational technology, you're saying that there are things that are educational technology and there are things that aren't educational technology, right? You're creating this uh, very inclusive group of things and excluding things that perhaps you might not have the imagination to perceive as impacting the educational situation. For example, GitHub. If you were to talk to average teacher X and said GitHub is an educational technology product, what do you think their response would be?
What is GitHub?
Right. So we would be because of our inexperience with the product. We would instantaneously be like, or if you could not very easily shoehorn that into a classroom by just giving it to a kid and saying, do the thing, right? No, this is not ed tech because it doesn't do the thing automatically. It doesn't do the what's this stupid the credit retrieval thing that they just throw the kids on.
Oh, like yeah, I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, whatever the Alex and stuff like that, where they just sit down and put your headphones on and it
iReady
yeah,
and
and that crap like that, right? Like when we think educational technology, that's the kind of stuff that we think about. We don't think about, and this is where I'm having a philosophical problem with the course that I'm taking. To me, it's not about education technology. It's about what is the problem, how can we solve it. And if it takes using the computer, the iPad, the phone, or whatever to do it, great, fine, dandy. If it does it, then it does it. Like it doesn't. It's not a function of a hierarchy in terms of this is valuable because we have used these tools to do this, and this is not valuable because these tools were used. Because I think that creates a very dangerous paradigm in terms of um, people valuing solutions, right? And that's where it becomes a situation where like this is why I'm against TPAC and SAMR and all these little artificial ways of creating hierarchies for how technology is integrated into classrooms. Webb's looking to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, one of the things that is has always frustrated me is sometimes the simplest solution is the best one, right? Like when we used to talk about Sammer a lot more, the thing that frustrated me was note taking, because note taking doesn't need to be reimagined really. Like in terms of the, because I think also that exists in a vacuum, like that those choices and that assessment exists in a vacuum. So like at a school where devices are a commodity and they aren't quite as open as widely accessible, trying to redefine note taking by using AR and VR is not practical for one thing. It's just it doesn't fit the context of what's available to that classroom teacher, those students. So trying to redefine, so that teacher's trying to redefine what note taking is, why you don't have the resources to be able to accomplish it, and you're overcomplicating something that doesn't need to be overcomplicated. Like there are plenty of ways that you can maybe upgrade your note taking in strategy that makes it more meaningful for your students, that doesn't actually require integrating technology. Or you do something basic like, hey, we're going to do an outline in Google Notes, or we're going to do it visually using Google Slides or something like that. Like that's a lot more accessible in that context than trying to use AR and VR.
But I think also it is what's the problem you're trying to solve, right? Because
Yeah, exactly.
if you're saying this is the problem we're trying to solve, I don't really care about how what you use to take the notes if note taking isn't the problem we're trying to solve, right? If that's just a step on into this greater idea. Again, I'm sitting in front of a computer right now. I've got my notebooks. I got like 5 notebooks that are sitting here with pens and crap all over. I don't want to necessarily have to type my notes out. I like to sketch my notes and write things or whatever, and then transfer them to the computer later on, perhaps, or something like that. Taking a picture of them, and so they're sitting in my notes on my phone or whatever. That's minutia. And again, it becomes a situation where we're so enraptured by the things that don't matter that the greater problem is now sitting like our we've wasted so much time deciding how we're going to note take rather than saying, dude, just take the notes the way that you feel comfortable doing them, that you've kind of missed the opportunity for the innovation. Which brings us back full circle to what we're going to be talking about today. So the GitHub idea, as so eloquently explained by Webbs here, is here's this repository of stuff. The repository of stuff is not just a random assortment of things, but this is a repository of code that is a step in trying to solve a particular problem, right? It just doesn't exist to just exist. How do we set up schools to function in a similar way that we're not simply throwing a bunch of resources out into the ether, but here's a problem, here are tools and steps and philosophies and stratagems that can be utilized to solve this problem, and this repository can stay so when I need to refer to that problem or the steps to solve the problem, I can access it whenever it's necessary. Whether I'm at a particular school, I leave the school, I'm at home, I'm at the movies, or whatever. Especially Webbs, I think this is especially salient because you're going to go into the 2022-2023 school year with staffing issues. If you don't have a solution for this kind of problem, you are going to have students, a large amount of students, who are going to be sitting in front of long-term subs, individuals who don't have the actual expertise in the content area, that is being proffered, and students, if you're talking about behavior issues now, wait until you have a situation where I'm sitting in front of somebody who has no idea what they're talking about, and the level of frustration one experiences.
Someone who just graduated from high school.
I mean, and I think that's going to be. Um, I understand the reasoning behind why they wanted that to happen. I still think that I fundamentally disagree with placing somebody who's 18 years old in front of other people who were perhaps born in the same decade they were born in. That's kind of really. I think you open yourself up to a number of unintended consequences, perhaps, making those decisions. So we will see. Given the lens of the GitHub, we're going to kind of walk through how we can utilize your Canvas space a little bit more dynamically, and not only for teachers, but for your classroom, for your students to also utilize this same kind of mentality in terms of building products together, getting away from the Bob got an A, Susie got a C, so and so got a D, rather than having the situation where how can we all collaborate and contribute to a greater idea in order for everyone to feel a level of success. Webbs.
Also, administrators. I think this is a great strategy for administrators to use to reduce the amount of time that you have your teachers in front of you stuck in the library for a staff meeting, to be able to communicate more effectively, to have a repository of places that they a home base where they know they can go to get resources, to set new teachers and new grade levels up for success by scaffolding what your expectations are and ensuring that they have the resources that they need in order to be successful.
So, multiple ways to do what we're going to attempt to do today. Multiple ways. This is not the way. I don't think that I'm not a expert in anything. That's why I enjoy playing around with stuff, because sometimes you get it wrong and you find a new way to get lost, right? So I'm going to show you a couple versions of this thing, and that's why we're going to start from zero. And then Webbs, if you could chime in with the GitHubish type functionalities that we're attempting to emulate, that would be well received. So I'm going to start here with new course, and I'm going to call this new course. And if you're the Clark County School District, conferences have been set up for your school, and that's supposed to kind of emulate what we're dealing with. But I don't have conferences here, so I'm simply going to say I'm going to make a manually created course, and I'm going to call this Hoodlums University. Now let's talk Hoodlums Elementary, because it'll be more
like Abbott Elementary.
Yeah. So bada bing. This is gonna pop up. Choose the image and all that wonderful stuff. We're not gonna worry about the aesthetic right now. We're gonna get to the functions first, right? So, great fine dandy. The very first thing I'm gonna knock out, is I am going to create modules. Now, why am I going to create modules? Because they're nice organizing principles, right? They're very, very nice in terms of organizing things. It's going to give it very easily be able to visually identify what's what. So I'm going to say kinder. I'm going to say first grade. I'm going to say second grade. Say third grade. Fourth grade. Fifth grade. Sped. And specialists. Could you add office and admin and all those things? Absolutely, positively. But just utilize this for right now. Now, I'm also going to ensure that every grade level has access to every other grade level. I don't want to lock these things off. I don't want to create separate courses for all the grade levels because Web's, my experience has always been there might be a first grade teacher that thought fourth grade. It has some very keen insights in terms of like you are asking a question that might be in that person's wheelhouse, or I may never have taught fourth grade before, but as a first grade teacher, this might be some things to ensure that your students have some familiarity with, or this is a technique I learned from a professional learning opportunity that I had that I want to share and make sure everybody's aware of and whatnot. I don't think that closing the rooms is a good strategy just because someone's not in a particular grade level. What say you, Webbs?
Yeah. Also, what happens when count day comes and I go from being a first grade teacher to being a second grade teacher? Now you have to shuffle me around and do a new course, blah blah blah. But this way, I can just look at second grade stuff instead of, and there's no assigning everyone to a specific course based on their grade level, and like everybody can just see everything. You have the ability to cross pollinate. The thing people have been complaining about back to office and how, oh, we need those, accidental run-ins with each other. Like this creates those collisions in a virtual space.
So, again, the modules are simply there to ensure that kinder knows what the kinder stuff is, first grade knows what the first grade stuff is, second grade knows what the second grade stuff is. So the modules are there just to organize how the hustle rolls out. And again, I'm not saying this is the only way to do this. Just a way. This is just a way to do it. So we have those things there. Now, oops. If you are a novice here, get rid of that. If you are a novice here in terms of the modules and stuff, that plus sign gives us the ability to create our different page types. Again, I am partial to discussions. I think those are the primo page types in terms of being able to have a discussion back and forth, having conversation back and forth. So I'm gonna say, okay, cool. The first unit in kindergarten is, I don't know, plants and animals. I don't know. So great. There's our discussion. Great. Now the dope thing, we've kind of talked about discussions over and over and over and over again and over and over again. Here's the plants and animals deal. Just like the GitHub, I can make. You said that there was there were GitHub pages, correct, Webbs? What was the purpose of the pages?
Yeah, so most repositories have a README that gives you the basics on like this is what it's for, this is how to use it, this is where additional resources are. GitHub Pages is like if you want further documentation, if you want to build a website inside of GitHub that kind of basically says this is what my repository is for, but a lot of it relates to here's how you use this thing, here's documentation about who created it, who's working on it. Um yeah, other information on like how it's running or testing or stuff like that.
So fundamentally, could we not use the text space here to emulate that same process, right?
Absolutely. Hey, this is the unit we're doing. This is the lessons or the standard it's going to cover. And then maybe resources down the bottom.
And so this is the place where we would have our explanation, standards, resources used in the past. Great. And that could all be collaborated upon and whatnot. Always allow threaded replies. So as people go in, you start adding information or having questions or whatever, we have that situation there. We're not going to worry about any of the other things that are there. I don't care anything about that either. I'm going to save. Now, again, you can make this as sexy as you would like. Now, the cool thing about this here is if you had the explanation, the standards, and the resources, all the things built in, if you already have a Google Drive folder full of resources or Symbaloo or Wakelet or whatever, those things can be added here with this explanation. The thing that's always dope about Canvas is, as you alluded to before, Webbs, a Google Drive folder is going to be a folder with just random things inside of it. That doesn't give me an explanation, doesn't give me a scope and sequence, doesn't give me any, unless I open it and perhaps there's some kind of longer thing there. But remember, Google Docs can be embedded into Canvas pages. The links can be placed here. This is a great place for, as teachers roll out of your school, go other places, etc. I still get to keep the knowledge that that person contributed. Or, and the other thing that's kind of dynamic or should be dynamic is, just because a teacher leaves your school doesn't mean you cut them off. That person might have things to contribute to your first grade, your second grade, your third grade, your fourth grade. They may have moved closer to home or out of state or whatever, but that person can still be a valuable resource in terms of helping uh, shape positively what people are doing, especially given the number of teachers who are retiring. If you can still plug into that resource and say, look, fam, I still need X, Y, and Z, or Miss Jones moved to Wisconsin. I still want Miss Jones attached to this thing because Miss Jones was like the greatest first grade teacher we had. How can we still utilize Miss Jones's expertise? Webbs?
Yeah, I think that's good. I think you might run into some problems assuming that they are using their district email address to access it if they move out of state or out of district. But like for sure within the district, like if I'm just moving down the street to Smith Elementary and before I was at Troy Elementary, like there's no reason why you need to boot me out of your instance. Like I still have the same email address. I can still, like you said, contribute, get resources. It reminds me a little bit of like what we used to do on Interact, where you had like different groups you could join and you could share resources like for all the music teachers or for all the PE teachers or whatever, or all the humanities teachers. Like you had those hubs, you can do the exact same thing. Or it kind of also reminds me a little bit of like how Slack and Discord are being used right now. I belong to a bunch of Slacks and a bunch of Discords that are as specific as tools that I use, or like OWASP, it's a security organization. I am in their Slack. There's a startup entrepreneurship Slack that I belong to because essentially this, like it's the ability to share resources and communicate. But I like this because you're organizing them by a related topic for your particular school, grade level, whatever.
I mean, and it's a tool that you, if you're in Clark County School District, it's a tool you have to use now, right? It's not an optional tool. So how do you go and um, exploit the tool to make it do what you would like, but also capture knowledge and keep knowledge so that it builds upon itself every school year rather than trying to replan every year things you are going to do. It doesn't make any sense. This way,
It
teacher come.
also
Wait,
is
Webs.
like a it also is like a Wikipedia, like you're building your own custom Wikipedia. And oh god, I had another thought and it's escaping me. I can't. Oh, it puts it in your path. I'm a big proponent of don't add another thing, like keep putting things in your path. So if you're going to be on Canvas anyway all the time, like don't have teachers have to go some complete different other place to get resources. Just put them all in the same place so that it's already a place you're going to anyway. So now you have this other resource that's in a place that you were going to anyway.
Big facts. And again, Canvas has a lot of really interesting things you could use in order to, again, continue to expand upon this idea. And so, if you're a school trying to do this, you have the conference concept. The conference concept in Clark County essentially is already set up like this. You have your teachers are already going to be members, et cetera, et cetera. If you're a teacher that's going to take this on, that people tab is super important. All right. And so right now, this is me. I'm in, Hoodlums Elementary School or whatever, right? Great. That adding people, all right? And by adding the people, I can say I want that person to be a teacher inside of this course. I want this person to be able to do, add things, et cetera, et cetera. I can have this person be just a participant in the course, have this person be a designer, observer, whatever. But being able to go and create your own PLN of, I met these awesome dynamic people at this particular professional learning event that all happen to be in my school district, that happen to be at different schools. Great. Let's go and just build this network inside of Canvas that's going to allow us to share our ideas across campuses. Hey, I just learned some new stuff. Here's a video that I found. Here's this I found. And organize those things by topic, by intention, by standard, whatever you wanted to do, and have this very dynamic GitHubish like group. When I have a problem and I need a resource, hey, I remember I'm part of whatever the devil you're going to call your Canvas crew. There was a thread where a teacher was talking about this new. They went to a PL professional learning opportunity, and they learned this great strategy for ensuring that EL students are able to utilize their Chromebooks more dynamically. Great. Where was that? Let me go look for that by topic. Here's that link, and I can go do it. Rather than having, again, the weakness webs, in my opinion, of in real life is you have to be in the same location as the person, and that's not always possible. Given that, again, for the last 2 years, we were able to see the ability to connect with individuals not in your time zone, not your same zip code. They don't speak the same language as you are, and for some reason, I think a lot of people are pushing back against that concept, at least in education wise.
I think too, it allows you to have access when you need access on demand versus if, I don't know, Danielle in my grade level has some resource and I need to get that resource from her. I have to contact her, wait on her, have her send it to me, blah, blah, blah. If we just get into the habit of, and we do this a lot in my Slack too, for work, like post the resource in Slack or post the resource in a place where we know that it's going to live so that it's super easy to find. We have this concept of Supreme Wiki pages. So when we start a new project, we start a Supreme Wiki page. It's just a Google Doc where we kind of index everything. And that way it's really easy to find all the resources related to that particular client or project because they're all listed right there. But you could do the same thing here. Like, and you could tie this into things like that. So if I do create a wiki page, like a front wiki page from a Google Doc, I can post the link to that Google Doc or embed it into the main like README or GitHub page of that particular module or discussion page or whatever so that I can easily find it and access it later.
Big facts, big facts. I think that is the goal is to work a lot more efficiently by working together and not having to go in. I mean, search the internet for things that we could have already found. Somebody else may already found and been placed into a place where I have access to, rather than racking my brain to try to figure out what are the best ways to do X, Y, and Z. And if I'm an administrator, this is like the thing that I work on for next school year is ensuring that when you have those last days of school, excuse me, that last couple of days of school, those first, the situation where perhaps you're paying people a week after school to come in and start to organize their lessons for next year. This is something that I would have set up so that if, Lord forbid, somebody decides in July, I'm going to take another job out of state, that doesn't sink your battleship. Because I think I am a doomsday prepper in that sense, Webs, in terms of if there are things outside of my immediate control, I want to control for those things as much as possible. If I don't have a certain expertise, I want to ensure that I capture. This is the reason why I ask so many questions of like very smart people. I don't know how to do those things. Let me try to capture what you know. So if you were to leave tomorrow and decide you were never talking to me again, I still have some kernels of the strategies that you utilize in order to be successful. All right. The other thing that this gives you examples of is Webs. Does Slack notify you when new things happen in your Slack instances?
Yes, it does.
We can build announcements inside of Canvas as well. All right. We'll give you the ability to say,
I feel like too this makes information more digestible. So I was thinking about an administrator using this to either augment or replace like staff meetings because let's be real, nobody likes sitting through a staff meeting in a library. Nobody likes sitting through a meeting that could have been an email. It also gives you the accountability that you need so that you can say like, hey, this person said that they understand whatever it was I was sharing. So if there's some required professional learning thing that you have to do, then people can do it at their own pace in the comfort of their own home, feel a little less frustrated. It's their professional responsibility to know whatever that thing is. So, like, you have feedback that says, "Hey, yep, Mrs. Smith did this thing and totally understood and has ticked off that box of requirement that I have to do." But also it allows for things like announcements that are right sized. So instead of running through a big long list of, don't forget we have the fall festival coming up and parent teacher conferences and this is when this is and this is when this is, like, instead you can um focus on one bite-sized announcement at a time so that information doesn't get lost in a big long waterfall of information. And I can go back and look at those bite-sized pieces as they are relevant to me instead of having to sift through one big long agenda from the staff meeting.
So you will see the announcements work similar to how discussions work. I can add a situation where I can allow people to comment as they deal with things. So if I want to make an announcement, I want to make sure everyone's able to see it. Boom, boom, boom. Found this amazing resource, blah, 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 whatever. Save. Cool. Well, let me do this. Yes, publish this real quick. You'll notice that again, it looks just like that. It's going to tell me what time it was posted on, et cetera, and I can reply to it. So if you have some kind of naming convention in terms of new resource, awesome thing, PD opportunity, whatever it is, those things will flash right upon. This is going to be at the very top of your course. People would see it. Also, again, if they have your notifications on for your course, similar to Slack, you're going to see when new things are added, you're going to get this notification that says, hey, look, Bob Jones just added a new resource underneath da 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 da. Your course has changed. Go and check this out. Digestible, smaller pieces, lets you know when things have changed and whatnot. Also, I can now learn and improve on my own timetable rather than I've got 75 million things to do today. I can wait until Saturday. I can go through all my resources and whatnot. And I think the other thing, and I was just writing this really cool, reading this piece of research about belongingness in video games. Being able to contribute to the greater makes you feel good, right? So this gives everyone an opportunity to say, I am valued because I have added value. This is something that I found I think everyone would benefit from. Here it is. Let's post that inside of our repository, our GitHub, our Edu GitHub, or whatever we're going to call it. Here's this thing. And then everyone benefits from my knowledge. It makes me feel good. It makes other people feel good. And it also encourages us to give in kind, right? I'm going to go find something as well that it really benefits me or has benefited me. Let me make sure this is a blessing to somebody else. And so I think that utilizing that kind of logic, Webs, is definitely something that isn't as leveraged in schools as much as it could be.
That relates to the research of Whiteside and Dickers about social presence. That's community cohesion. So sharing resources, to your point, exactly, makes you feel more valued and makes you feel like you're part of a community. Also, affective association. Like, this is a great opportunity to share, funny gifts and just respond to people with different things and build that relationship virtually in order to build the relationship in person. I think there's another thing I was thinking about. I can't remember now. I'm totally drawing a blank. My ideas come and go so quickly.
Well, I mean, the other thing is it's function over aesthetics, right? Then a lot of people are worried about making things really pretty rather than thinking about at the core what problems is trying to solve. Go ahead, Webs.
I remembered. Another thing is, and this is always something I really struggle with. So you go to a staff meeting and you have something that you have to submit by a certain date or time, right? Whether that's ticket money for the fall festival or some scheduling thing for parent teacher conferences. If you schedule it in, if you have this space in Canvas, you can create like an assignment or something that notifies the end user this is when this thing is due, so that it will show up for them and say, hey, this is when this thing is due. Make sure that you get it done. Instead of it being some date written somewhere on some flyer that I have to go dig out that maybe got wet or got printed wrong or whatever, it's always there for me if you create it as an announcement or an assignment that has a due date to it so that you are aware, like, hey, this is when this thing is due. I need to make sure I get it done.
Big facts. All right. So, but in terms of aesthetics, right? One of the things that people are very, very heavy on is making the thing look really pretty. As you just saw, one of the reasons why I didn't want to build this thing out first, because I did not want people to say, "Oh my God, that's so pretty." What? Start with the function first. What are you? The problem you're trying to solve, and then we can make it pretty later on. But having a situation where the simplest version of the product happens first, the MVP happens first. This is a thing. This is just going to work. Great, it works. As we iterate, as we change things, then we can put our design eye on it and make it look really, really pretty. I mean, I was looking at this like the rough video of some of the robots that are now running and jumping and stuff like that. And it looks, I mean, these things look like Frankenstein messes, right? And it was just proof of concept. Does this work? Yes, it does. Now let's go and make it look less scary. But the idea first is just going to be, does the thing work? If it does work, great. Users are happy. It does what it's designed to do. Now let's go and put the pretty colors on it and make the interface really nice and all that other wonderful stuff. And so that's the other thing that kind of not. I really try. One of my things, Webs, I think we kind of agree upon this situation is just being real with people. Like the design part and stuff. This is not like a this is not the Autobahn, right? This is not where you're going at 200 miles an hour. This is sometimes you're going to be on a bike and you're going to go 6 miles an hour, and that's fine. You're going to get there eventually, and then eventually you can go to Tour de France and all that kind of stuff like that. But it's baby steps to get where we want to go, and the baby steps aren't always pretty. What say you, Webbs?
We call that a minimum business increment, where you have a beginning to end, like, thin slice of work. So you have full functionality, even if it's not the most attractive functionality, and you build thin slice by thin slice instead of like, okay, I'm going to build out all of this layer of everything. So I'm going to I don't know, like, put in all of my topics for the entire year so that everybody has them. Like, no, just do the ones that are needed now, because that may change in the future. You may develop a new style along the way. Like, lots of things can change between now and then. So just do the ones you need now and iterate on it. You can always go back and improve. You can That's the beauty, I think, of digital tools, is you are not committed to, I have to print 500 flyers. You can go back and change it. Think about the amount of paper you would save if you switched over your, like, staff meeting flyers to being everything being in Canvas, so that it's a digital product that you can iterate and change on as needed. You have a history of what's happened to it. You have copies forever, because you don't have to worry about, oh my God, my copy got wet, it got deleted, it got lost, whatever. You can recover things if they get deleted. Like, there's just so much more flexibility to using a digital product as compared to, like, paper.
Big facts. Um, so we are
This is
going
this is
to
not where I
be.
thought this was going to go, by the way. So this
I
was an
mean,
entertaining ride.
dude. I mean, I the other thing, and I'm gonna say this kind of soapbox ish. The other thing that's like really interesting to me is like when you're this is kind of again to the course that I'm taking right now. Let's look at educational research. I'm like, all right, why are we limiting ourselves just to educational research, right? Why not have a situation where how does educational research um, collide with research in other areas, right? Sociological research, psychological research, health research. How do those things? Where do they meet in this that weird, that zone that is going to allow us to better understand each of the systems collectively rather than one of the systems separately. And it's very interesting that with so much access, this unprecedented access we have to all of the things, we are still artificially limiting ourselves to, let's only look at this thing. You're like, okay, very interesting. Very interesting. And uh, again, when we do that, someone might have already solved your problem. They just might have not solved the problem in an educational journal. It might be in an applied physics journal that you decided not to look at because I'm only interested in education, right? So,
Because GitHub is an ed tech tool.
exactly right. Or like, this is only meant to do this one thing. No, I can make that thing do a whole bunch of things that perhaps that it wasn't intended to do if I just look at the product differently, right? Because I always use the baseball bat. Baseball bat was built to hit a baseball, but I could stop an intruder entering my house with the same implement, right? Just because it wasn't built and designed for a particular instance doesn't mean I cannot apply it there. And I think that's that again is the danger of TPAC and SAMR and all these like very narrow philosophies that say this is how we implement these things rather than saying, here is a problem. What are ways we might solve the problem? And this is another reason why in my classroom the last couple years, when we talk about the design thinking process, ideation, daydreaming happens before ideation. What are the most insane ways we could solve this problem that don't limit us by what we have or don't have? That, let's go really left field, because that's going to be this uninhibited, outside the box. That's where you're getting your Sharknado ideas, right? Because if you go to just, we're going to brainstorm, it's kind of a pedestrian thing, right? Like, oh, okay, that's boring, dude. And it stops the kindergartner in you from expressing themselves. And to me, you should be in touch with your inner kindergartner, like at all times. Because think about the wonderful things that have been created in our world because someone tapped into the inner kindergartner. Again, I mean, I've watched all 8 Sharknado movies and enjoyed them all because it's just straight foolishness. The world will be a less fun place without Sharknado in it. A less fun place. We're off for the next 2 weeks, but we will see you on the 24th, something crazy like that, the 15th, some
middle of April.
Middle of April. We'll come through with some more goodness in terms of this, because I think we're gonna. My hope is we're gonna kind of expand this GitHub niche. And for administrators and teachers, etc., if you're interested in this idea, we are going to be available to really guide you through this process over the summer and the next school year. We're going to make our services available to you, because this is not while this isn't like this instantaneous, simple process, this isn't like a super difficult one at all either. If you emulate existing systems, the GitHubs, the Slacks, the Discords, they've already carved this lane for you. You just need to adapt the tool that you're forced to use to mimic and emulate some of these systems that are already very prevalent and that your teachers and your students may already be familiar with. All right, so it's simply changing your system to match these existing systems. Webbs, any closing concepts, ideas, thoughts?
Nope. You can always find us on here, Twitter, our website. Feel free to reach out if you are a teacher or administrator who's interested in us working alongside you to help you build some of these things out.
That's what the deal is. We'll catch you in 2 weeks. God bless America. God bless Ukraine as well. Keep give peace a chance, man. That's all I can say. All right, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Peace.
Bye, everybody.